My sons and I got on the bus about 3 in the afternoon on Sunday, October 8th. We were driven away from Kibbutz Beeri. At some point along the way, my son Ofir said to me, listen, you know that group of guys from the army, that guy who was in charge should get a Medal of Honor. He saved about half of the Kibbutz Beeri. That's what my son said to me, without knowing who this guy was. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I don't even know this guy's name. And within all the chaos, I never found out. And how will I be able to tell what happened?
Heroes of October, a podcast in memory of Shira Banki, the Kalmanson Force. Our story today is a tale of bravery and self-sacrifice that occurred on October the 7th. We continue to pray for the safe return of the hostages and soldiers and mourn with the families who have lost their loved ones.
My name is Menahem Kalmanson. For 30 years now, my family, the Kalmanson family, has resided in Otniel, a settlement south of Hebron, less than a half-hour drive from Beersheba. My brother Elchanan and I were part of the settlement's civilian rapid response team. Elchanan worked for the Mossad, the intelligence agency of the State of Israel. We didn't know what he did there exactly. I'm a teacher in a yeshiva high school. On October 6th, my family and I drove over to my sister-in-law's place in southern Israel to celebrate the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. The following morning, messages started pouring in, and I understood that something was happening, but I wasn't sure yet what was going on. I decided to drive back to Otniel, and from there I assumed I joined my Army Reserve Unit. I'm a religious person, but when it comes to security, we use our phones and drive even on Shabbat. As I drove back home, I saw dozens and then hundreds of vehicles pass by me in the opposite direction, all filled with men in their army uniforms on their way south, on their way to the war zone. All the stories I'd heard throughout my childhood about the Yom Kippur War in 1973 start running through my mind, about convoys racing north and south. It was as if I was pulled back 50 years to the day. I arrived in Otniel and was immediately assigned to our village's guard duty. I figured that they'd probably call me soon to join my artillery unit. I got off guard duty around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and almost immediately got a message from Elchanan that simply said, I'm packing a bag and heading south. I call him. What are you planning? To which he replies, I'm going to seek efficiency. I'll find out how to be useful. Elchanan's reserve duty expertise was in defending villages and instructing civilian rapid response teams, and he wanted to help in any way possible. I was still debating whether to head south with Elchanan or join my artillery unit. I finally decided to go down south with my brother. So I leave in the car with Elchanan, in our bags, loaded weapons, and we head south.
My name's Dany Fuchs. On the morning of October 7th, I woke up in Kibbutz Beeri, where I've been living for the past 50 years. Almost immediately, I realized that something unusual was happening. It was about 6:25, and that was when the bombardment started. It wasn't the usual sporadic bombing we were used to. Honestly, I thought that the Air Force was bombing Gaza because it was on a scale that we'd never heard before. At some point, I told my family, this is a diversion. It's bombing isn't normal. The terrorists are coming in, they're on their way.
We drive for a while and reach southern towns between Beersheba and Gaza, and we start seeing the burned cars riddled with bullet holes on the sides of the road. Another car and another car, and the realization and the shock from the sheer amount of cars that were hit. We saw puddles of blood, and we were shocked how far from the border the terrorists had managed to infiltrate. It wasn't near Gaza, it was more than 15 miles away from the border. And Elchanan occasionally stops, texts back and forth with people, I don't know with whom, and he realizes that the place that needs us the most is Kibbutz Beeri.
The word kibbutz, plural kibbutzim, means grouping or gathering in Hebrew. It's a community of people who live and work together.
Beeri has a WhatsApp group called the Mommy's Group, which is probably the largest group in Beeri. And the messages in the group kept coming in. People were reporting what was happening, that their homes were being invaded, that terrorists were murdering and taking people hostage. At some point, we even saw a video on Instagram that was circulating in our group where you see people being abducted. It was then that we started to realize the scope of the disaster. We were scared to death. That fear, that anxiety, it's the kind of anxiety that's hard to describe. It's being scared for your family, first of all, and you're hearing everything that's going on around you. The homes are close to each other, so you can hear the screams, and you realize that it's like Russian roulette. Totally random. Will they enter my house too? We're sitting and waiting, and no one is coming. All we hear around us is the terrorist shooting. And I realized that it wasn't a battle. It was pure butchering. We can hear the terrorists shooting and slaughtering people and the screams. We understand that they're killing people and taking them hostage. The army isn't showing up, and the hours keep passing. Another hour passes and another one, and it's not clear what's going on. Where's the army? It feels like we've been abandoned. At a certain point, out of a sense of helplessness, I called the police. An operator picks up and I scream, "Send forces! Do you know what's happening, Beeri? They're burning houses. They're slaughtering people." Most of us in the kibbutz have safe rooms. These rooms have enforced concrete, which were meant to protect us from missiles and mortars that have been fired on us for the past 20 years. The rooms can't be locked because if something happens to you, emergency forces need to be able to enter. Some folks did find ways to lock their safe room by taking off the door handle or by jamming the handle with a metal bar, but not very many. There was a point where we opened the safe room's window, just the inner side of the reinforced window, in order to hear what was going on outside. and we could hear terrorists passing by the window right beneath us. They actually came into our yard, so we decided that we needed to hide somewhere else. We crawled out of the safe room, took the ladder and fire extinguisher with us because we knew that they were setting houses on fire. We took some water and a phone charger and went up to the attic. My wife, my son, and I were hiding in the attic, and from there, we could hear everything. And the sounds were horrible. Just horrible. When I climbed up to the attic, I couldn't help it, but this image came into my mind of Anne Frank. That's where we're at. A complete and terrible sense of helplessness. How did this come to be? Where's the army? At some point, the soldiers finally arrived in Beeri and started fighting terrorists all across the kibbutz. My family and I were rescued from the house. People were taken away by buses away from the kibbutz, but I chose to stay near the kibbutz gates with my sons, Ofir and Dror.
Meanwhile, me and my brother are approaching Beeri. We passed through army roadblocks intended to stop terrorists from moving further up north and stop civilians like us from heading south. We stop there and they ask us, "Who are you? Where are you heading?" And Elchanan just rolls down the window and starts making up unit names. We're with the 3012, 506 is waiting for us, and at some point he's just using numbers from his cell phone. We're 5771 and all sorts of numbers. And of course, they let us through. I haven't met a soldier who would dare say, "I don't know that unit," especially not in this kind of situation. And we're getting closer to Beeri. On one of the beautiful scenic roads, we see an overturned white pickup truck, an ISIS-like pickup with a machine gun. A few dead bodies of terrorists are lying next to it with their weapons still on them. Vests and a few RPG launchers are scattered on the road with rockets still inside them. And not a soul in sight. No one even bothered to remove the weapons after the battle. And again, the realization slowly sinks in. What the hell happened here? Such a huge magnitude of firepower, and no one even bothered to kick the RPGs to the side of the road. We zigzag along the road, see sights that are taken from horror movies, and we reach Beeri. We reach Beeri in the evening. Elchanan and I are sure that we're arriving to the end of the incident. We reach Beeri's gates, and there are dozens of soldiers outside. Some of them are called out elsewhere. Some are on their way in. At this point, there's a lot of fighting happening in Beeri. Commando units fighting inside with over 100 armed terrorists. When we get to the gates, I see on my left the guard's post, which had been destroyed, its windows smashed. Next to it are a few dead bodies of people that later on I was told had escaped from the Nova festival that took place not far away. A festival of people who were there to celebrate life, and instead, over 400 innocent people were murdered or kidnapped. The gates of the kibbutz are open, but they're badly burnt. A car is smashed against the gate. Clouds of smoke rising from Beeri, from all corners of the kibbutz. Sounds of fighting the likes of which I've never heard during my army service. Rifles, machine guns, explosions. A battlefield. Things that I know now were grenades, RPGs, tank shells. More blasts, red alert sirens warning of incoming missiles and mortar shells. It was genuinely arriving at a different world from the world we know, a parallel universe. We park at the entrance to the kibbutz on the lawn and we laugh. We had both worked at some kibbutzes in the past, and for kibbutz residents, the idea of driving over the lawn is completely unacceptable. We both laugh and hope we don't get in trouble. We go over to the command center and see high-ranking officers directing units in Beeri. We go back to the gate and we're told by one of the men that he was called to the entrance gate when the fighting started. He fought the terrorists, but there were other infiltrations through the fence. Hundreds of terrorists infiltrated the kibbutz. So he's still here, but his family and his kids were inside, in the safe room, and he was worried sick about his family. This is already 12 hours into the ordeal, and there are families in there, and some have lost the ability to communicate with the outside world. I knew that from a military viewpoint, first you need to take out the terrorists and then evacuate civilians. So the units were involved in fighting, and no one was evacuating and extracting civilians. There were spontaneous extractions throughout the day, but there was no designated unit going in and out, in and out.
You need to get the whole picture. It's now 7:30 in the evening. Loads of army units. The IDF's most elite units are fighting inside Beeri, but there are about 1,000 citizens sitting inside their safe rooms waiting to be rescued. Some are under heavy fire. Some are in areas that are deemed safe.
Outside the gates, we hear about a 12-year-old girl, Hadar, whose parents were both murdered and the house is on fire, and she's hiding. She needs to get out as soon as possible. Elchanan contacts an officer from the Oketz unit, the Canine Special Forces unit, and they manage to get a lightly armored jeep. I don't know how, it wasn't theirs, but they got a jeep which had already come under fire. So we go in with them. 5 soldiers, Elchanan, me, and another officer with his 2 soldiers. And we all go looking for the girl. The GPS is down, so we don't have online maps, no clear map of the kibbutz, and the kibbutz residents just show us the directions on Google Maps. Because their verbal explanations don't work either, because they tell you to take the second turn to the left. But the second turn to the left is blocked by 3 burning cars that got hit by anti-tank missiles. We take a screenshot, and we use that screenshot to try and navigate inside the kibbutz. We disembark, come out of the jeep, and I see right before my eyes a tank fighting along with dozens of soldiers around it. A very intense fight. It's starting to get dark in the kibbutz. There's a power outage. Our main source of light is from burning houses and the jeep's headlights. And I'm thinking to myself, that tank is probably here as an armored vehicle, and then I see that it's firing shells. The tank was engaging in the fight, and I realize even more where I'm at right now. We meet up with some soldiers that ask us what we're doing here. We told them looking for the girl. We go into houses and realize that those same burning houses, there are still civilians inside them. We evacuate an elderly couple. I don't know their names. Elchanan is leading us. His experience and leadership play a vital role throughout the whole event. I take this couple to the jeep, and this time I go back to the jeep from the other side. And there's a hedge there, and a few terrorist bodies lying next to it. And it's dark, and I'm with a loaded weapon, with the safety off, and my finger is on the trigger. And suddenly, a figure jumps out of the bushes, just a figure that appears. I don't know how to describe it. There are sounds of shooting all around us, and the figure of a tall man appears. Black curls reaching down to his shoulders. He's wearing nothing but his underwear, and I'm about to shoot him, but Elchanan had always instructed us that during an incident in a civilian area, you have to identify the target before pulling the trigger, because it might be a panicking civilian and not a terrorist. And I hesitate. I yell, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Ilya," with a slight Russian accent. And that accent might just be what saved him. I tell him, "What are you doing here?" And he tells me, "I was hiding." "But why are you wearing just that?" "That's how I ran out this morning." It's 7:30 in the evening, and I don't get it. Wait a minute. If he's from here, why didn't he run away? He was hiding for hours among the terrorist bodies, and I'm not sure about him. Maybe he is a terrorist who was stripped from his clothes. We talk some more, sounds of battle around us, and I calm down a bit. I get him in the Jeep and confirm with the others. "You guys know him?" And they tell me, "Yeah, it's Ilya." So I ask him, "Do you have a family? Kids?" He tells me, "Yeah, I have kids." "Where are they?" "They're gone." Now, I need to be certain, so I ask him, "They disappeared? They ran away? What happened to them?" And then he shouts at me with a broken voice, and he grabs his head with his hands, and he shouts at me, "They're gone! They're gone! They're gone!" And I get it. I get what sort of gone he's talking about. And that's the first round into Beeri, with Ilya and the burning houses, and he's shouting that his kids are gone. We drop them off at the kibbutz's entrance gates. The moment we pass through the kibbutz gates, we don't worry about the people anymore. It's like going back into the world that we know. We did what we had to do, and we decide to go back in, to save more people. Ilya got in touch with me after a while. He told me that during that morning, he ran into the safe room with his two children, his 15-year-old boy Lior and his 13-year-old girl Gali. And they somehow managed to lock themselves inside the safe room until 10 in the morning, when terrorists came into their house. They tried to get them to come out using all sorts of manipulations. They knew that they shouldn't open the door no matter what. The terrorists shouted, "We're the army!" throughout that day. They used kids in order to convince people to come out. But Ilya didn't open the door. The terrorists fired shots at the door, and then they brought drills, and they managed to take out one of the hinges apart. So now there was a small gap in the door, and they threw a grenade through it. It exploded in the small safe room, and Lior was badly injured from the grenade. He started losing a lot of blood, and he got drowsy. The terrorists lit the house on fire, and the safe room started filling with smoke. Ilya and his daughter Gali decided to open the safe room's heavy window. Immediately, they were fired upon and quickly closed the window again. And Lior was not responsive. There's nothing that they can do for him anymore, and the safe room is filling with smoke. And Ilya realizes that they either die inside the safe room or they try the window again. He opens the safe room window, helps Gali jump out. There's a little slope of grass outside. Gali falls onto it, and Ilya jumps out after her and rolls over the grass. And the moment he lands, bullets are whizzing by him, and he starts running away, and he calls Gali's name, but she's not moving. And he runs, and he hides behind a tree in the neighbor's yard. After 2 hours behind the tree, he starts advancing towards that hedge. He makes his way there and starts digging with his fingers a small ditch, and he lies there for hours. I was there. He showed me the spot. The ditch is still there, human-sized, about 8 inches deep. and that's where he hides motionless for 6 or 7 hours until I run into him that evening. And all around him that day, terrorists walk by and do as they please in the kibbutz. Inside the jeep, he started shouting, "They're gone, gone." He's thinking of Gali and Lior. 3 weeks later, Ilya gets a message from the army that Gali's alive. She was abducted to Gaza. Gali was frozen from shock, and then she ran into another house. They let her in until she was abducted and taken hostage into Gaza. A 13-year-old girl taken as a hostage. I meet Ilya a month and a half later, and he tells me his story. I hear him, and at the same time, I hear him shouting in the jeep, "They're gone," and it echoes through my mind. Gali was released 54 days after she was taken hostage, and it's hard. It's hard to describe that feeling and the joy when I saw the video of her running to her mother. They hug and don't let go for a long time. Maybe a small consolation. Lior didn't make it. 15 years old.
There was a problem of people not opening their safe rooms. Terrorists tried to trick people, so they yelled, "Israeli army, Israeli army." And people who came out only to be slaughtered. So we sent WhatsApp messages instructing people not to open their doors. And even when the army units came to rescue them, they wouldn't open the doors to the safe room. The army realized that the rescue teams needed to know precisely who they were going to, what their names were, the sort of information that could tell them, "I know where you work, I know how old you are, I know names of relatives," that would encourage trust and convince them to open the door. This information was given to these units at the entrance to the kibbutz prior to their going in.
We continued to rescue people and reached the Alon family, who were extracted from their house by soldiers after it was set on fire. They had terrorists inside the house. The soldiers get them out of the house in the last minutes. And when we get there, the house is burning to the ground. We get them into our jeep and we speed outside with them. 2 months later, the Alon family realized that we were relatives. My grandfather, may he rest in peace, he was a Holocaust survivor. And my father says that he was a very good father, except for 1 hour a day, which was a nightmare. The Seeking Relatives radio show. After the Holocaust, many people didn't know the fate of their relatives. So there was a radio show where people searched for one another. It was forbidden to make a sound inside the house during that hour. They had to keep completely quiet. For years, my grandfather waited for someone out of all the relatives and brothers to maybe reappear. And after a while, he discovered that he had a cousin who had survived. And that family, the Alon family, are that cousin's kids. After we found this out, it became an emotional event, but we didn't know it at the time. Elchanan and I extract the Alon family and finish the second round of extraction. Outside the gates, we receive a report about the Freaker family who are in their house along with their neighbor. The woman's pregnant and she's not feeling well. Elchanan and I go in for our third round. The Freaker family was in their home with a neighbor. He was having a panic attack, so they took him into their home. And they're hiding in the safe room, and 14 terrorists infiltrate their house. And by pure miracle, they don't break into the safe room. But when they exit the house, they leave a present behind and torch their house. A unit of soldiers locates them there inside the safe room and evacuates them to the house next door because they still can't take them further at that point. we get there and extract the mother, the daughter, the son, and the neighbor who was really having a hard time. 13 hours into the battle, something like that. And when the pregnant woman appears, I see that she's heavily pregnant. She was on week 40 plus 5 days. And I ask her, how do you feel? And she says, okay, but dehydrated. So when she gets inside the Jeep, I ask her if she can feel any movements in her stomach. And she said that she didn't. I told her, don't worry, it's because you're dehydrated. You just drink, eat something sweet, a little bit of juice, and it'll be fine. Elchanan told her, don't worry, your child, your baby boy, he's going to run around on the lawn here and play and have fun. The kind of talk that was very unlike Elchanan. He surpassed himself in so many ways. And then she corrects him and says, baby girl. During my meeting with Ilya a while later, we met them too. Them and their cute and sweet baby girl. We're just about to get out of there, and the daughter says, I won't leave. My dad's still inside. And Elchanan tells her, what's your name? She says her name, and he tells her, listen, my name is Elchanan Kalmanson. I promise you that I'll come back and get him out. Wait at the gates, and when I call out your name, you'll know that I got him out. When we reached the gates, the guys from Oketz, the Canine Special Forces unit, had to part from us, and we kept going on our own. At that point, Elchanan and I realized the level of danger in each and every entry into Beeri for the rescue operations. We drive without the headlights on, and we're cautious of both terrorists and friendly fire, because everyone is with their fingers on the trigger and on edge at that stage. We go in for another round of extraction. I see a flickering flashlight signaling at us to stop. We stop the Jeep, and then I see through the windshield, I see beams breaking and dots on my chest. I shout to Elchanan. I freak out. I'm shouting to Elchanan, what is this? And he tells me, oh, it's lasers. Just like that, in a calm tone. And we're in a military Jeep. We're talking in Hebrew, wearing uniform. We roll down the window and shout, IDF, IDF, lower your weapons. And we come out of the military Jeep, even though we don't have the headlights on, and we're shouting to them, lower your weapons. And they shout, what are you doing here? And we say, we came to extract the family. And they don't lower their weapons until we're literally standing 6 feet away from them. Because they were already attacked under similar circumstances with terrorists shouting IDF to them, wearing uniforms, walking not far from them. And the fact that we're in a Jeep doesn't mean anything. The fact that we're in uniform doesn't mean anything. And it took them a few very intense seconds until they lowered their weapons. And we told them, we're here to look for the family. And they say, we've done a thorough search and there's no one here. We extracted everyone who was here. So we asked them, did you get the family out? And they say, we don't think anyone's here. I tell Elchanan, let's roll out. But he says, wait. He realized something. He figured the soldiers entered the house and shouted, is anyone here? And when no one replied, they left. Elchanan knew something was off. I think that's the difference between someone who's a family man, someone in the reserve duty who leads a civilian rapid response team, and a young soldier who does his job the best way he can, but doesn't understand how a family thinks. And we enter the houses and manage to find more families that we evacuate out of the kibbutz. After we evacuate a family outside the gates, someone walks over to us and asks us to evacuate his sister and her family. We drive to his sister's house. 2 months later, when we met with people from Beeri, this cute kid comes to me and says, hey, are you the one who took me out of the house? Now, that sort of question really gets you. It's hard to describe. I'm with tears in my eyes, and I tell him, maybe, what's your last name? He tells me his last name, and I tell him, yes. It's the Ben Tzvi family. And it turned out that the kid filmed the whole extraction. The video is not necessarily hard to watch, but it's hard to listen to. When we got there was a wave of smell that hit us. They were inside for 13, 14 hours already, with diapers. They needed the toilet too. How many are you? I think they said 13 or 15 of us. We only had a 4-seater Jeep, and there's 2 of us already. I walked them over to the living room. Elchanan goes out to see what's happening outside, and I tell them, and you can hear this in the video, who are the parents? Please, cover the kids' eyes. Right outside their doorstep were several bodies of terrorists lying on the ground. Terrorists or no terrorists, a kid shouldn't see that when he comes out of the house. I tell them, cover their eyes. And then you can see us in the video. We get to the door and Elchanan's already out. And suddenly, another Jeep drives by. Elchanan quickly waves for it to stop, half go with them, half come with us. They took the adults and we took the kids. And the kids, they started to panic. Where's my daddy? And it's the kind of crying that's hard to hear. It's on film. There aren't any harsh visuals, but the kids crying, that was harsh. All in all, when we took the people out of there, we were surprised. The kids were calm and collected. There was exemplary parenting there. The parents' commitment to their children's lives, to the children's emotional well-being. Extracting a family after 22 hours, 23 hours, when the kid's relatively calm, sitting down, his dad holding him. That's admirable fathering skills, in my opinion. One of the people told me that during the morning, there were terrorists outside his house, and they heard what they were doing to the neighbors. And he's got a little kid with him. So he carefully opened the safe room door and crawled out to get headphones for the kid's tablet so that he couldn't hear what was going on outside. He wanted to protect his kid's soul. I find it hard to describe what kind of parenting that is. After we got the family out, an officer from an elite unit comes over to us. He had heard about our evacuation and asks to join us in order to extract his parents. We get to the house, but there is a battle raging there. We decide to drive away for now. It's a decision that you have to make. We can't join the battle and don't want to interfere with the warfare. We would only cause trouble. We get him out without having gotten his parents out. They were extracted later on by someone else. The officer directs us to another kibbutz member. We extract a few of his friends, and one of them asks us to save his sister. He joins us, and we get to the sister's house. First time for me going into a house that was looted. And it's hard to describe how defiled those houses were. The meaning of the graffiti on the walls was easy to understand. Houses were mainly looted after the terrorists had taken over the kibbutz and called all sorts of uninvolved, innocent little saints who came in and looted. And I say that as a fact. They murdered, they took people hostage, they sexually assaulted, and anything they could steal, they stole. And whatever they couldn't, they broke and demolished. So you see food on the floor, torn mattresses, broken cabinets, flipped couches, shattered artwork. We call his sister's name, but she doesn't reply. He calls her name out a few times. She doesn't reply either. So he starts shouting, "They murdered her!" And we're trying to keep things quiet. I tell him, "Be quiet." We get him in the Jeep. I give him my phone, and he calls his sister again. To everyone's surprise, she answers, and it turns out she was already rescued. We knew how dangerous the situation was. At some point, we were about to go in again, and Elchanan tells me, "I don't want to go back into that inferno," which was what we said after the incident where we almost got shot. Elchanan says, "I don't want to go back into that inferno." And then we go back in again, and again, and again. We're scared, and we go back in again for the same reason that you're scared, because you've seen what happened to the families, so you can't stop. And there were times when we got there at the very last second, extracting a family through the safe room window while the house is in flames. And you know that if you got there 2 minutes later, then it would have ended differently. At that point, Elchanan and I are outside the gates, and we meet our nephew, Itiel, a soldier in the commando unit who wasn't assigned to reserve duty yet. In the middle of the night, he joins us. I was shocked that Elchanan was letting our nephew come there. Now, he's a much better soldier than I am, a far better fighter, but a nephew is something else altogether. We meet him at the Beeri gates. When Itiel arrives, I ask him, "Where's your weapon?" And he tells me, "Here," taps on his handgun. I tell him, "You're not going into Beeri like that. A handgun isn't a small rifle in any way, shape, or form. You can't go into Beeri with that." So what do? Unfortunately, there are more and more injured soldiers coming out all the time. We open the doors of an ambulance assertively and ask the soldier, "What unit are you in? Which battalion?" And we tell him, "We're from the same battalion." And we take his rifle, slam the ambulance door, and shout to the driver, "Go." And that's how we got Itiel a weapon. And similarly, a vest and a helmet. So it's not just us now, not just the brothers anymore. It's a force, the Kalmanson force. It's getting really late, and we're on high alert and tense, and we're getting tired. At that point, the last guy we extracted asks us to rescue his uncles. So then I talk to his uncles, and they tell me, "Come quick, the house is on fire, and we're in the safe room." I tell them, "Okay, where's the safe room?" Because we'd already had some houses where it took a while to find everything. They tell us, "Second floor." So I tell them, "If the safe room is on the second floor, how are we supposed to reach you? The house is on fire." They tell me, "Just get here, we'll work it out." Itiel hears the conversation and he tells me, "I've got some rappelling equipment in my car." I motion at him with my hands, like, no, that's no good. Because he doesn't realize that rappelling in Beeri isn't taking a risk. It's straight up suicide. I don't know what we can do, and with a heavy heart, I tell them, "We'll try to get there later on." And I hang up. For something like a month and a half, I go around with that phone call in my stomach. I don't have the courage to ask how it ended. Finally, I find out that they were rescued. I have no idea how, but they survived. I have no idea how they managed to survive that ordeal because, unfortunately, sometimes we reach the houses too late. Reaching a house too late means that you see that family's story. Who had tried to defend whom, how a person was killed, who tried to hide where, the one who tried to hide in the attic, that elderly man who tried to protect his wife with a gun. I won't go into graphic descriptions and that sort of thing, but very hard sights. Difficult for any person. I'm not in Zaka, not in Chevre Kadisha, the volunteers who handle bodies and body parts from the scene. I had never seen or touched a dead body before that. But seeing the dead like that, it was hard. At one point, when we're driving in the kibbutz, although it's dangerous and might be a trap, we decide to stop the car and slowly carry the body of a young woman from the middle of the road to its side. Even the dead need to be respected. My wife calls me at around 10:30 or 11 at night, shouting and crying to me over the phone. "Menahem, they're talking about 250 dead already." And I tell her, "Ayelet, they haven't started counting yet." She says that I told her it would be more than 1,000. I can't recall, but if she says that, she knows. Outside the gate, a man comes over to us, wanting to rescue a 90-year-old relative. He joins us. Later, he would tell me that he thought something was strange about our unit. First of all, that the officer is the driver, which is unusual, and the one sitting next to him is telling him that he's more important now, and they both laugh at the young soldier in the back who tells them that they're finally even, that he'd had enough of babysitting them, and that he won't tell his mom about them. The man said that something didn't add up with that unit until he finally realized that we're family. And, oh, okay. We didn't talk about the possibility that something might happen to one of us. Not that it didn't cross our minds. It comes up in your mind, but I don't know. I don't recall saying that if something happened, then we'll do this or that. We talked about us not wanting to get hurt. Elchanan said that he'd promised his kids to come back and dismantle the sukkah with them. Sukkah is a temporary shelter Jews construct and reside in during the week-long Jewish holiday of Sukkot. Our family has lost relatives in terror and war in the past. We know the meaning of losing a family member. It doesn't matter how strong a family you are. It's not simple. It crosses your mind. But for the same reason that I worry about my kids and my wife, that's what motivates me. I can't live in a land, and I can't have them living in a land where being a soldier, even though no one had summoned me, by being a soldier in the IDF is an essence, not a command. It's an inner command. There's no way that a soldier won't run into the flames in order to save civilians. And that was the state of Israel's greatest mistake for the past 20 years. We had a firefight at a playground near a migunit, which is a small portable bomb shelter. And when these words came out of my mouth, I grabbed my head and said, a migunit next to a playground. In Beeri, you get 7 seconds to run into a safe place. The state of Israel chose to let kids run to safety in 7 seconds. It became acceptable, a norm. I don't know the kid who could get off a slide or a swing and run into a shelter in 7 seconds. And the people here have been living like this for 20 years. The state of Israel chose not to do something about it, but build shelters. It wasn't active enough. It basically told the people, yeah, you may get killed and there is nothing we can do about it. I'm glad we're finally doing something about it these days. It's getting close to midnight. We receive a report about a grandmother. She's a 90-year-old woman who needs to be rescued. She's been in the safe room for almost 18 hours. No electricity, no water, no food, no medication, and hard of hearing. We go in again, despite the fear. And at this point, we're tired, exhausted, and very scared. We go to save her, a 90-year-old woman, and we're told that she needs her medication and her hearing aid and batteries and shoes. So I tell Elchanan, nothing. We get in and get out. They can buy new ones. So he tells me, okay, and goes in. And I'm sort of covering on the right. There's a grove there and a few houses. ETL's on the left. We clutch our weapons and listen for any sound. We peer into the darkness. Now, we're not really covering the area. It's only just me on the entire right side of the house and ETL on the left. And there's shooting from the grove that's approaching us. I can literally hear the hits, ting, ting, like bullets hitting closer and closer. And I see tracers, bullets with pyrotechnic charges that allow you to see the trace of the bullets. I shout to Elchanan, let's get out of here. I'm pleading with him. Come on, let's get out of here. I'm scared to death. And Elchanan tells me, wait a minute. And the minute gets longer. And when he finally comes out with the woman and we get in the Jeep and speed away from there, he says, I got the medication and the hearing aid and the spare batteries and shoes. And I hold back and keep quiet because it doesn't feel right when the family is in there with us. But I'm enraged. And when we get them out at the gates, I yell at Elchanan, everything can be bought again. And then he tells me, listen, you can't extract an old woman without her hearing aid. You can't have people leaving this place like refugees. I think Elchanan saw the soul, the spirit, and he also saw the desire for tkuma, for revival. He realized that the manner in which they got out was critical, not just whether they managed to get out. That a person needed to have a few seconds to part from his home, leave with something except for the clothes on his body, leave with dignity. Later on, around 4 a.m, I take a mother out of her house, and she says, "I can't go out like this," and asks to pack a few clothes. Itiel standing outside on the street, covering the Jeep with a family inside it, and I tell her, "You can't." And she says, "Please, I can't go outside like this. Let me pack a bra and some pants." So, despite the danger, I help her pack with my weapon's flashlight, and we take the kids' glasses and bring it to them because we can't have the kids leaving without their glasses. We take an enormous risk because they've been through enough, and I hear Elchanan's words. It's not just if they leave or not, it's also how they leave. When we extracted this older woman and kids, we tell them inside the army's armored jeep, "Keep your heads down." At first, I mumble some illogical story, but then Elchanan says, "The jeep's roof is an armored steel, and we don't want you to bang your head because we're driving on bumps and lawns because the roads are blocked. So keep your head down." What led him to that wasn't to keep them from hitting their heads, but for them not to see what had become of their kibbutz, the carnage, the horror in every corner. And Elchanan keeps telling people we're saving, "Remember your kibbutz, how beautiful it always was. You'll come back here and rebuild it." And I can say that in my mind, the people of Beeri are the epitome of steadfast settlements. Moral, ethical people, hard-working people. The Beeri printing press resumed its work a few days after the battle through their incredibly strong set of values. The people's extraordinary character. They resumed their agricultural work there, rebuilding the kibbutz.
The rescue operation continued throughout the whole night under fire while the fighting raged on. No matter how you look at it, it was an extremely dangerous operation. But amazingly, most of the civilians who were rescued were not injured.
All the while, we try to keep our spirits up. It sounds weird, but from moments of weeping about what we're seeing to stupid nonsense that only takes place between brothers. A family gets into the Jeep, and Elchanan tells them, "Welcome to the Cash Cab Game Show." One family laughs, and then when the next family gets in, he does it again, but they're in shock. So I tell him, shut up, it's inappropriate. And that was it. Quick changes from one moment to another. What I meant about the weeping, it's not quite weeping, it's your heart breaking. It's looking around and not having words to describe what you're seeing. I sang a tune to myself. There's Ma'oz Tzul, the song you sing in Hanukkah, and the last verse is very sad. You don't always notice it because it's sung with a happy kind of melody. But the last lines talk about avenging the blood of our slaves, about salvation. And there's a melody that I love very much, which is very melancholy and quiet, the Breslev melody. And I hum it to myself over and over again. Avenge the blood of your slaves. When you see the bodies in the streets, it makes you shudder. At 4 a.m, we receive a report about a few homes with people inside. I was exhausted. I started nodding off there, and at the same time, we were occasionally extracting wounded soldiers. One of the units, they lost their commanding officer when he went in to extract on his own, because he realized that he couldn't endanger his men, but he knew that people were running out of time. So he took his signalmen, and both went searching for civilians. The officer was killed, and we helped his unit search for him with their armored vehicle. That unit was running out of ammo, so Elchanan organized ammunition for them. He contacted a friend who managed to bring some ammo to Beeri, and we handed out the ammunition. And after that, I felt so tired. I was nodding off. So I went into the guard post, got some instant coffee, and mixed it with tap water and drank it in order to stay awake. And we opened up fridges to look for sodas or energy drinks. And in one of the homes that we extract, we asked them, "Do you have any cold drinks?" And they're looking at me like, where did that come from? They told me, of course. But you need to understand that opening a family's fridge, when the house is looted and you don't know where the family is, it's a horrible feeling, even if your mind tells you that it's all right. It's almost dawn, and we're completely exhausted. We go into another house, and I shout, "Is anyone here?" And no one answers. Of course. We go in, and we see that someone's been there already. I go to the safe room. "Anyone here?" They don't reply. I knock, and I see that the handle's locked, shut. "Is anyone in there? We're IDF soldiers. We're here to get you out." I suddenly hear a voice. "Who are you?" "We're IDF soldiers. We're here to get you out." "Yes, but who are you?" "I'm Menahem Kalmanson. I'm from Otniel, reserve duty soldier. I'm here to get you out." They say, "Keep talking so we can hear your accent." And I realize that I need to convince them that I'm a Jew. So I pause for a minute and say, "It was Simchat Torah today." "Talk some more." "And it was Shabbat." "Talk some more." "We did the hakafot, the encirclements in the synagogue." "More." "It was Hoshana Rabbah." And I think to myself, wait a minute, this is a secular kibbutz. Do they even know what Hoshana Rabbah means? They tell me, "Talk some more." And then I shout to them, "Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad." "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord." I shout the prayer, and with the last word, Echad, the door swings open, and a crying woman comes out, and another woman after that, and another foreign care worker, and I hug the woman, calm her down, and we take a bag and her phone, and we go to the Jeep. We move on to the next family, get another couple out, move from home to home until we reach a house where we find 6 people hiding in the safe room with a young neighbor who ran over to them in the morning. This family with their 3 children, the youngest being 4 months old, have been in the safe room for around 22 hours. And when they come out, the red alert sirens warning of missiles suddenly starts. And I tell them, "Get back in the safe room." And I tell Elchanan, "I can't believe we're doing this to them. They finally come out of the safe room after such a long time, and we're telling them to go back inside. And they'd already had terrorists inside their home. It was by a miracle they survived." It was a very harsh feeling, but we finally get them out. And at the end of that round, I hear myself saying this sentence: adults holding children, holding babies. Because there are 14 of us crammed into a 4-seater Jeep with small bags and weapons and the equipment that's in the Jeep, and Itiel is sitting on my lap. And again, we laugh at him, and he laughs at his old uncles, and we head out. We continue to rescue people throughout the night. The sun rises, and we see sights that really break our hearts. It's 9 a.m, and our eyes are literally shutting. Every time we say, maybe one more house, and that's it. One more house, and that's it. But we keep going. And at this point, we feel a little safer. It's morning. The shooting subsided. They're still shooting from all sorts of directions, but a lot less than was at night. And we already started, whenever we went through a house, to go through the house next door too. We even got people out by doing that sometimes. But we didn't go through the houses methodically. It was always based on reports each time, and we're walking through the small lane, walking across a garden, and there are some bushes distracting our view. I'm walking on one side of the pathway, they're walking on the other side, and suddenly Itiel shouts, "Who are you? Freeze! IDF! IDF! Terrorist! Terrorist!" And Itiel starts shooting towards a mark that I can't see. And Elchanan and Itiel start to chase him, and they shout at me, "Cover the side." Elchanan tells me, "I think he ran to hide in the migunit, the bomb shelter at the playground." I flank it from the side. We're basically closing in on the migunit, the mobile shelter, because we're sure that that's where the terrorist is hiding. And Elchanan calls for backup, paratroopers unit comes along with a tank. They blow up the Migunit. We already started patting ourselves on the back for taking out a terrorist, but it turns out that he managed to escape. So we go back to the house to search for people. When I laid in front of the door, it was maybe 10, 15 minutes, I don't know how long, and I was looking through the weapon sights, and my hands are aching. And while Elchanan and Itiel check the house, I'm outside covering them. And I see that my hands are trembling from exhaustion, literally shaking. And when Elchanan comes out, I tell him, listen, I'm beat. Last house and we're done. And then he laughs and says, yeah, we say that every time. And then we decide to go in again. So I tell him, no, listen to me. I can barely hold the weapon up anymore. It's dangerous. Last house and we're done. The flashlight batteries are dead. It's 10:30 in the morning. The house was dark. Elchanan went in first. He takes a step inside. From a dark corner of the house, a terrorist dressed in black opens fire. He had armored penetrating bullets, and Elchanan is shot in the chest. He shouts, "I'm hit!" and falls backwards. I'm right behind him. I turn to cover the side and shoot a few rounds at the terrorist. Itiel immediately comes in and joins the battle with sheer determination. I can feel that I was hit too in my hand, and there's blood dripping onto my eyes. My hand doesn't hurt. I just feel like I'm hot, and blood is dripping straight into my eyes. I can barely see anything, so I step back. I drag Elchanan behind the wall, and I tell Itiel, "Elchanan's down. We can't die here, the three of us. We're the extraction team." We discuss it for a minute, and I tell him, "We can't do this to Grandma. We can't die here, the three of us." And then I see that Elchanan's chest is moving up and down. And I shout at him, "Elchanan, stay with me! Elchanan, stay with me!" And his eyes, which had been rolled back, suddenly start focusing. And he looks directly into my eyes. And I know that he was conscious and that he recognized me. And he saw us trying to save him. At this point, Itiel was guarding the door because the terrorist ran into one of the rooms to hide. And he says to me, "We need assistance." We know that the terrorist was hit by our fire. We saw blood spatter where he'd been standing. But for all we knew, if we left the entrance, he could still shoot at us. So I run to the playground, but the units weren't there anymore. So I ran back and try to bandage Elchanan's wound, but I realize I have no way of helping him. And then I hear a jeep approaching. I run like a madman towards the jeep, drenched in blood, and I shout to them, "Stop! Stop!" And they can't hear me, so I lift my weapon and start shooting towards the sky. And I realize what that means. The jeep comes to a screeching halt, and I run to the driver's door and bang on it. "Help me! Help me!" Later, the driver told me that he said to the other soldiers, "I'm holding the door, you shoot the terrorist down," meaning me. But when they got out of the jeep, they heard me shouting about helping my brother, and they saw Elchanan by the front door next to Itiel. So they came over and took Elchanan. Itiel and I run to our jeep. This time I'm driving. Itiel notices my injury and sets a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. And we're speeding through the same road we've been driving across throughout the night, towards the guards post, to the same exact spot where we brought the people to during the morning. Itiel comes out and says, "We have a wounded soldier, badly wounded. He's coming any minute now." They lay me down on a stretcher. Elchanan is on a stretcher next to me, and I'm pessimistic by now. I'm thinking he's dead. And I tell the paramedic, "That's it. My brother's dead. I can't believe it." But then I see that they're treating Elchanan, and there's a glimmer of hope in me. I see the doctor trying. They start to evacuate me, and I tell them, "Don't evacuate me. Take Elchanan first." And they say, "There's a chopper on the way. He'll get to the hospital before you." I get into the ambulance and start questioning them. Are there blood rations on the chopper? Can they perform surgery? What else can be done? Inside the ambulance, I hear the chopper over us. By that time, the tourniquet they put on me was very painful, and I'm getting into some sort of a panic attack. We hear the chopper passing by, and they tell me, "You hear that? That's your brother passing over us. And then I start thinking, okay, he's there. They offered me ketamine, all sorts of things, and I said, I can't. I have to get to the hospital with a clear mind so I'll be able to find Elchanan. And when I get to the hospital, I drive the nurses at the ER crazy. Where's Elchanan? Find my brother. He should be at the ICU. Elchanan never got on that chopper. It was someone else. Shortly after my evacuation, he was pronounced dead. Elchanan died at the same place where we dropped off around 100 Beeri residents. Kids, babies, adults, elderly people. The very same place outside the gates of the kibbutz. That's where Elchanan was pronounced dead. I got the news of his death on a phone call. My wife called me and I tell her, Ayelet, I'm okay. And she says, but Elchanan. And I ask her carefully, what did you hear? And she says that he was killed. So that's how I found out. And in a strange way, I calmed down for the first time. Because I'm saying to myself, someone already told them. I'm not the one who has to tell them.
My sons and I got on the bus about 3 in the afternoon on Sunday, October 8th. We were driven away from Kibbutz Beeri. At some point along the way, my son Ofir said to me, listen, you know that group of guys from the army, that guy who was in charge should get a Medal of Honor. He saved about half of the Kibbutz Beeri. That's what my son said to me without knowing who this guy was. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I don't even know this guy's name. And within all the chaos, I never found out. And how will I be able to tell what happened? The following day, I started asking around, and I found out that that guy whose name I didn't know was killed. It was very painful. And I started asking around, and I got his name, and I called someone from the same settlement, Otniel, and he told me, we're at the funeral now. I told him how important it was for me to meet the family and tell them everything that he'd done here. Later on, my friend from Otniel told me that he spoke at the funeral and mentioned what I said and how meaningful that was for the family. My son-in-law Yochai and I drove over to pay a shiva call, a condolence call. And we sat with the family and with the children, and we told them about their father, the hero. It meant something for us that they meet us and hear the story in our own words, in the thought that maybe it could provide them with some comfort, and maybe it might find it meaningful.
I want to tell you about one of the rescue operations. It was at 6 a.m. We extracted a baby, a family with a baby girl. And then, after everything we had already seen, I asked the mother, can I hold her for a bit? Because fathers can understand what it's like, holding a child after everything you've witnessed. And she hands me her daughter, and I tell her, you know, she looks a lot like my niece. I have a niece called Ma'ayan, around the same age. And I ask her, what's her name? And she tells me, Ma'ayan. So I say, take a photo, we'll send it to my little brother. Every now and then, they send us photos of her and videos of her, and it's a real energy boost, getting something like that. At the end of January 2024, there was a very moving event. The Beeri synagogue was given a Torah book in memory of Elchanan. Our family was there with hundreds of Beeri residents. You have to understand that something like this, only a few months ago, was almost impossible. The people of Israel have been torn between right and left. And the way the Torah book was designed, it was spot on. It was in a shape that wasn't typical of Torah books. It's a Sephardic Torah book, silver-colored, with an engraving of the map of Israel and the words Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live on. The Mossad emblem was on there too, and the swords of iron war emblem. And the names of all Beeri's dead are etched in the book inside it. And at the top is Elchanan's name, along with the name of the father of the person who made the donation. And it was very moving. That's the only way I'd imagine the bringing of a Torah book in honor of Elchanan. When it merges the people, the land, and the Torah entwining them, the people's unity, our shared love of this land. Elchanan loved this land so much, and this event was very powerful and meaningful for me, and it was somewhat of a closure. The subject of unity in Israel is one of the things that hurt us the most, hurt us all, because many people on the left and right saw each other as enemies. But Elchanan didn't, because that's how our parents had raised us. And it's absolutely Elchanan's legacy to see the people of Israel in unity, together, to understand there's pain on both sides. Some of the grievances are justified, but we have to show responsibility and see the bigger picture, put things aside, deal with all of that later until we can breathe again over here. The most painful moment after this ordeal was when someone asked me about us, people who are right-wing that went to save people in a kibbutz, which are mostly left-wing. And I found that so surreal. That question. The question shook me to my core. That hadn't crossed my mind even for a split second. It wasn't, not only is it not something to consider, not even as a statement, not even symbolically, a question that should not be asked. And I get asked questions that make my blood boil. Do you think it would have happened if it was the other way around? And I tell them, absolutely. Nowadays, there are kibbutz people who serve in the army and guard Othniel, and there always were. And there are those who look for gaps, rifts, and try to widen them. People whose entire life is fueled by creating a rift. And we've let them navigate this country for far too long. And the politicians follow what the people shout. And it's time for us to start speaking differently. It's time for us to shout a message of unity. When a married couple remembers that even though they argue, they still want to live together, then you can solve everything. But when the couple is constantly busy with who's right and who's wrong, and every debate has to have a winner and a loser, you can't live together. So first thing, we have to remember that we want to live together. The goal is for all of us to live here together. And then it will be possible to resolve differences more easily. I was asked about the connection to the kibbutz people. I said that even though it may be surprising, we are very similar. We both have guiding values that really burn within us. A very, very strong sense of community. A deep bond with the place in which we live. Very high rates of military service, especially in combat roles. High rates of officers. We love the land. We always look out for the less fortunate, and we don't just value money and success. When you think about it, it's so easy to make that connection. Elchanan, first and foremost, was a family man. He loved his wife, Shlomit, in a very unique way, adored her, was attentive to her. He loved his children very, very much. When he was working for the Mossad, even during the craziest of days, he would call his daughter, bring her food if she asked, and call to say goodnight to the kids before they went to bed. He talked to me about his kids in Beeri. He loved them so much. He didn't want to die. He wanted to live with them, wanted to go back home and dismantle the sukkah with them. And he also knew that he was currently a soldier, and he had a commitment. Elchanan was scared to go back and forth into Beeri, but he knew what he was getting into. He didn't get to Beeri by mistake. He dedicated his whole life to defense. He knew that the people of Israel are worth it. He couldn't stand on the sidelines. That wasn't in his character. That's the Elchanan that we loved. And our family has pain, but also a privilege that we had Elchanan. This story is painful. It's a family tragedy, but also a story about the people of Israel being worth it. It's a painful story, but not a tragic story. It's a story that I'm proud to be a part of. And it's thanks to Elchanan that I got to be a part of it. It doesn't lessen the pain, but it provides meaning. We miss Elchanan so much, but we know that his spirit lives on.
It saddens me to say that so many wonderful people from Beeri were injured and killed and taken hostage. We still have people held hostage in terrible conditions for almost a year later. And for us, this incident is still in the present. It hasn't passed. It isn't over. Not until the last of the hostages is returned. We're still in the middle of it. For us, it's still October 7th.
Thanks to everyone who took part in creating this episode, especially the Jewish Syrian community of New York and New Jersey, who supported the making of this episode. Thanks to Yuval Malchi, Dov Green, Harari, Fania Tagar, Menahem Kalmanson, Dany Fuchs, Michal Katz, Maya Thomas, Josh Zilberschlag, and Shira Zaguri.
Sound designed by Ori Ben Dor. Guitar, Ofir Swaid. A special thanks to Yosef and Daniela Benun and to the Shira Banki Foundation.